But when PFL bought Bellator, that was such an exciting acquisition. You know, we've got the UFC as the number one, and now we've got the number two and three coming together. So far, it appears that they are operating still as separate entities. You just come from a Bellator show. Now we've got a PFL show. When's going to be the point where this all comes together and we really see a kind of unison where it's like, okay, you've got the UFC, but now we're coming after them because we've got this product, this very unique product that we've merged these two big companies, these great two rosters we're building. We're going to be paying guys certain amounts that we're going to bring guys in. We're going to be this attractive force. When's it going to happen?
It's coming.
Is it?
It's coming.
Because it needs to, man.
It does. It does. And I've had these conversations. So, throughout the month of August, we had 3 PFL playoff events, 3 global events. And every one of those events, we had a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations about 2025 and, what the landscape's going to look like and what the company is going to look like and what we need to do to keep moving forward and keep progressing. And also, look, the reality is to get some fans on board, because there are some fans that they don't understand the product, so they don't bother with it. They don't like the fact that we don't use elbows, so they don't pay attention to it. There are lots of things that we could do in the short term to fix things quite quickly, I think, recruit more fans, recruit more fighters, certainly, and grow the interest in the promotion. But the biggest issue right now, and you've highlighted it, is the fact that there's so many different pieces all going on at the same time, right? We have PFL Global to start with. Then we started PFL Europe, which is the feeder show to PFL Global. Now we've got PFL MENA, PFL Africa starting. So, the promotion is kind of forming underneath, but because we started with the global tournament, it made it quite confusing for new fans to follow along. Now, I've been working actually quite a lot in the past few weeks on what a global structure would look like, right? Because in my opinion, the PFL Global format, I like it. I think it's really good for fighters at a certain stage in their career to know that they've got 4 fights. At the end of that, there's a global title and $1 million, right? That is a fantastic marketing tool to keep us in mixed martial arts, but show that we're something different to what the UFC is doing. Now, the reality is the UFC, I love the UFC. The UFC's been around for so long. It's such an integral part of combat sports now that we're never going to move ourselves into that position and put the UFC out. It's just, we would have to be around for many, many years to do that. But what we can do is to build something alongside the UFC, which offers something quite different, right? Now, the UFC is looking for the elite talent, but the talent that can sell tickets and trash talk, and they've got the right fighting style, right? We like you, but we don't like the way you fight. We like you, but we don't like the things that you say. We like you, but we don't like the way you look. You know what I mean? So there's a particular style of fight and fight that the UFC are going to try and find. What I'm trying to find in PFL Europe is the best fighters that we've got in this region, right? I'm not really bothered whether they are going to take you down and control you and beat you upon the floor. I'm not really bothered whether they've not got a social media presence. I'm interested in the martial arts. I want to see the best people that we've got, regardless of whether they're, they can adapt to the social media trends of today. And if it's up to me, this is what I'm doing with the PFL. I'm building the regional circuit where all those regional circuits feed into that the global league, which obviously is what we've got at the moment. Then we've got something above that, which right now is Bellator, right? But we need a champion series because each year globally is going to produce 6 champions, and those 6 champions are going to have to go somewhere, and they're going to need a step up. So if we have standing champions, PFL champions, then those guys can go up and fight the PFL champion, and we have an actual champion as opposed to a yearly champion where the belt goes back into circulation. I like that format, but for me, that fits in the middle tier. We need a tier above that. And then if it was up to me, I would have a tier above that. I would have a master's class. I would have a division where you can move the likes of Tony Ferguson and Donald Cerrone, etc., where, they're not at their best anymore. They shouldn't be fighting the elitist fighters in the division, but they can still give us really good fights against other guys of a similar talent and level. So that's I'm working on a structure right now to put that into place. Of course, I'm not the only person making the decisions, so I've got to have lots of conversations to try and convince people that this is the right way to go. But I do very much feel like it solves a lot of the problems. The confusion around what the PFL product is, the confusion of bringing Bellator in and what Bellator is and how that fits within the, within the promotion. And also, if I'm a young fighter, what is my path through the promotion, right? 3 fights and I win a European title, I get 100,000. Then I go on to the global, I've got 4 fights and I win $1 million. Then where do I go, right? I'm going to fight a champion. I need to fight a champion. I need a new belt. I need another challenge after that. So this is where the structure needs to make sense. It needs to have that tier right up to the very top where we have that champion holding the belt all the time.
If I was to be judgmental, I would say you quite like a conspiracy theory.
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this conspiracy theory is an MMA conspiracy theory.
Okay.
And it's come from the mouth of your colleague, Jake Paul.
Okay.
So I want to know what you think if this could be viable. He's saying the reason we're not seeing Conor McGregor fighting is because the UFC don't want to risk going into their TV right negotiations next year with the idea that Conor might not have any fights or might only have 1 fight left on his UFC deal. That's the theory. Over to you.
That is very interesting.
Isn't it?
It is very interesting, and it can make a lot of sense. I don't feel that the UFC have got the same amount of superstars that they had previously. This is why I feel like Dana's doing what he can to defend the status of Jon Jones, even though we all know Tom Aspinall's the heavyweight champ. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Like, Ngannou left, Jon Jones didn't cross over with Ngannou, so we've got to keep selling Jon Jones as the superstar because he's one of the only pay-per-view draws that they've got left. You know what I mean? And I don't really know what the UFC needs to do to fix this because the stars are out there. They absolutely are. It's just so difficult to find another Conor McGregor. You know what I mean? And I think because he carries so much weight, and then Jon Jones right behind that, and both of these guys are coming towards the end of their career. They've potentially got 1, maybe 2 fights left. I would think that the UFC are thinking to themselves, right, where is our power moving into the next lot of negotiations? I mean, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. It might even make sense as to why, Jon Jones's career is being delayed a little bit. I don't know the status of his injury, of course, but the reality is I'm not really interested in seeing him fight Stipe.
No.
Like, I like Stipe a lot. I like Jon Jones a lot. I agree with Dana that Jon Jones is probably the best pound-for-pound fighter. I just need to see him fight again. Yeah. And I need to see him fight someone that's going to convince me that he is the pound-for-pound guy, and I think that's Tom Aspinall. It must be a difficult thing to do with the UFC. We've got so many big events, so many big expectations coming up, and the stars that were really resonating with the fans are now coming towards the end of their careers. I don't know whether the UFC needs to just kind of make way for the new stars coming through because they're all there.
Yeah.
Even Kayla Harrison crossed over from the PFL. She's destined to be the UFC champion at bantamweight. I don't see anybody that's going to be able to even remotely slow her down. So let her become a superstar, Let her take the position of Ronda Rousey and put that marketing machine behind her.
Yeah.
Like the UFC have got such a powerful voice that, no matter who they shine the light on, they can make a star out of them. And I think maybe they're a little bit too selective now. Like Sean O'Malley, of course, he's always going to do well. And that was proven in the figures coming off the Contender series. The viewing numbers that he was getting was absolutely wild. But there are very, very few fighters coming through that can have that impact. And obviously Conor McGregor is, he is the man.
What do you think needs to happen for the rest of the year for Tom Aspinall to firm up this shot against Jon Jones? What kind of stars need to align here?
I feel bad for Tom because I don't really think he can do anything else. I think one thing that he does do very well is his personality online. Like the video he put out the other day of, what's Dana's line? If Jones goes into a room with anybody in the world, Jon Jones is the one coming out. And then Tom made a video going, "Well, I'm going to go and try and find that room." He's very, very funny. He's very likable. The UFC need to invest in him.
Yeah.
Like even Dana saying negative things about him, like he doesn't deserve a shot. It's madness to me. He is a legitimate superstar.
Yeah.
And I think it's time for, Jon Jones to either step up and fight him or to step aside. And this is where the Masters division comes in, right? Yeah. Like Jon Jones doesn't necessarily need to fight Tom Aspinall because he's already achieved so much in his career. But if he does want to stay in the sport and if he does want to be the champ, then he's got to fight the best guys. I don't mind if Jon Jones just fights super fights against whoever is going to be interesting to match him against. Even Stipe, if you want to do a super fight with Stipe, do it. Great. But they don't represent the best heavyweights on the planet right now, right? Tom Aspinall for me is, Tom Aspinall and potentially the winner of Ngannou for Hader. That's the heavyweight champ of the world. The winner of, when we get the winner of the Ngannou for Hader fight, that person versus Tom Aspinall, that's the heavyweight champ of the world.
Do you think Tom beats Jon if that happens?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I think Tom beats Jon Jones right now.
Wow.
And Jon, again, no disrespect, Jon's been one of my favorite fighters for a long time. He's got a level of brutality and technical ability as well as his creativeness that is unrivaled. And that's maybe why Conor's up there with him, because he's one of the only people that is as brutal and as creative. But Tom Aspinall right now, he's too fast, he's too athletic, he's too well-rounded as a fighter, and he's too close to his prime. And I just think he gets to Jon Jones too easily and too quickly. And then that would devalue Jon Jones as a fighter for the UFC, which is why they don't want to do it.
Wow, okay. Just going to rattle through another of the UK guys. Paddy Pimblett, have you adjusted your appreciation for how far he could go, for what he could achieve in this sport?
Yeah, I really have. Nice. I really have. Coming out of Cage Warriors, I thought to myself, he's going to be a really fun fighter to have on the UFC roster. But I always saw there was a limitation to where he was going to reach. Partly due to his physicality, partly due to the fact that I didn't really feel like when he was in Cage Warriors, he was as dedicated as he is now. But I think since he's arrived on the UFC roster, and I think, he's had a couple of really big performances and his stardom started to grow, I think he's realized that he has to put the work in to keep that going. He spends a lot of time with Paul Reed, who's a fantastic S&C coach and nutritionist, and Paddy just looks like a different beast right now.
He looks incredible.
He does.
Physique-wise, he looks incredible. Last time I didn't.
He does.
He had a back.
Right.
He had a bum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've never seen him with a bum before.
For sure. He's still been growing into the lightweight division. Yeah. But, what his S&C coach has done with him, it has been really incredible. But also that takes a lot of dedication from Paddy's side. And we're going to have to see, that dedication turned into other areas of his game as well. I want to see his striking develop. I want to see his wrestling develop, because he certainly has the potential to beat everybody. I think we can agree on that now. He has the potential to catch anybody any day if he's on his best, and he's in a very, very difficult division. You've just got to be working all day round to be, head above water in the lightweight division.
Yeah, it is stacked. Leon Edwards, does he ever become a UFC champion again, or is his run one and done?
I'm hoping that the last
one and
fight,
done, I mean become a champion once.
No, I think he can.
Yeah.
I do think he can, and I think the loss to Bilal Muhammad is going to take him to a new level as well. Leon is a supremely talented technical fighter. The thing that I feel Leon's missing, and I'd have this conversation with him. He's missing that. He's missing the viciousness that Jon Jones and Conor have. He's missing that ability to intimidate people with viciousness, right? This is why I feel like a lot of the time the fans don't invest in Leon as much as they should, because they don't feel like he's enjoying it quite as much as other people do in there. And it's a weird thing, enjoyment. What I realized a few years ago is that MMA fans instinctively, when they're watching a fight, there's something in us, some kind of tribal mechanism in us that's looking at a person and going, would I follow this person into battle? Out of these two people, which one do I choose as my leader, right? When you're watching Jon Jones, you're like, yeah, I'll follow this guy into battle because he's the most dangerous person I've ever seen. Like Conor McGregor, you've got the same kind of vibe about him. I want to see Leon want to hurt people. And I don't say that in any kind of lunatic way, but you watch Leon against Cowboy and you watch Darren Till against Cowboy, and Darren Till just put it on him, right? There was no way that Cowboy was going to survive that to the final bell, whereas Leon carried him, in my opinion, to the final bell. And this is the thing with Leon, is he's got the ability to blast people out of the water, and he fights at the level that allows them to stay competitive in the fight. And I think if he just got that little bit of that little edge, that little gritty teeth and let's go because you're not taking this from me. I think that's where the fans really will connect with him more, you know, when he really shows how much he wants it and he's willing to dig deep from the first round.
What's interesting is that probably, for my money anyway, the last time we saw Leon be very front foot, direct, purposeful with his aggression from the off was the first fight against Bilal. If you remember, he was pushing forward, big kicks, heavy punches. He hurt Bilal in the first round. And yeah, since then, it's different. It's been different. His demeanor does look different. It's passive is probably the wrong word, but I know exactly what you're saying here.
It's like some fighters fall into this trap, and I would say that Israel Adesanya can fall into this trap as well, right? He potentially fell into the trap against Strickland. You know, he did against Duplessis as well. Whereas if you watch his rematch against Pereira, like that was I remember watching this and thinking to myself, man, this is a Muay Thai version of Israel Adesanya. Like, he's not sitting back and kickboxing and stuff. He's stepping through ranges with power punches and body kicks. That was a different version of Adesanya, and he was able to beat his rival, one of the most scary guys on the planet. There's no way that Israel Adesanya has that performance against Pereira and then isn't able to replicate the same thing against Strickland and Duplessis if he fights the same way, right? But with those two guys, it was almost like he gave them the space to work, which is what Leon can do sometimes, right? Like, Leon's UFC debut was 8-second knockout, right?
Yeah.
8-second knockout. He's got the ability to beat anybody very, very quickly.
How difficult is it going to be at this point in his career, the age he's at, to flick that switch? And do you think he's got it? You know him. Do you think he's got it in him?
Yeah, I do think he's got it in him. I think, you know, and this is why I asked Coach Dave in his corner, you know, you saw that first fight against Usman, where, sorry, not the first one, the second one for the belt, where he got that great speech in his corner, right? It was a fantastic speech, and sometimes you need that coach in your corner, but I never needed that coach in my corner. I never needed someone to say, just go and get it, because there was always something in me that prompted that, right? Now, having that coach there that can draw that out is really, really useful. But if you need to go back to your corner to get that motivation to come out and win the title, that's my concern. I know that Leon's got that in him. He doesn't need somebody in the corner to draw that out of him. What I like to see is a fighter that has that naturally. They go back to their corner for technical information. They don't go back to their corner to get hyped up because they're in a fist fight.
There's always that thing with Jon Jones. You go back to his corner and be like, "Okay, Mr. Jones, give me some deep breaths."
Exactly. Yeah,
you gotta hype him up.
But Greg Jackson is a fantastic coach in his ability to adapt from one fighter to another. Like, he even puts accents on sometimes. Greg Jackson. He's very, very clever the way that he does it.
Yeah. Look, you mentioned Muay Thai. Before you get away, we just want to reflect on what we saw at the weekend with one championship. Liam Harrison, devastating loss to the legend that is Sexan. He laid his gloves out on the deck at the end. We understand that he's going to try and do one more fight, potentially back in the UK, just to kind of say goodbye. But if this is the end of Liam Harrison's career, you've got a rich history in Muay Thai. I mean, what's his legacy?
I mean, legendary. Legendary, and I don't throw that around, especially, you know, there are a lot of like famous legendary Thai fighters, but there are so few legendary Thai fighters that have come out of Europe. You know, like Ramon Dekkers was always one of my favorites, and there are so few that have had an impact on Muay Thai like he did. I would say Liam Harrison's right up there. Like, even other great Muay Thai fighters that I talk to, they'll go, "Oh, I saw this. I saw Liam Harrison doing this. I saw this technique that he uses here, or I've changed my low kick because he does it like this." And, you know, that's when you really know that you've had an impact on the sport. And to be fighting, I mean, what is he, 38 now?
Yeah.
Like, to be fighting as long as he is, and Muay Thai is a hard sport, right? Just to get into the gym every day and do the rounds is hard. So he's really proved that you can, if you do it right and if you do it consciously and you look after yourself, you can have a long and successful career. And even if he doesn't fight again, I don't think it matters. We've got so many good fights that we can go back and watch. What I want more than anything now is for him to focus on passing on his knowledge, pass on his information, open a gym, train some superstars, train some champions, and that's really where his legacy continues to grow.
Yeah. And if it is the last time we see him, it's you know, not the perfect way of going out, but it is quite a romantic way of going out, in that his heart never let up, his body couldn't quite have it, He was swinging till the absolute ends. It was entertaining as hell, which is what he's always tried to do for us. Just a quick word on Jonathan Haggerty.
Oh man,
We saw him in there with Superlek, 49-second knockout. What did you make of that?
it was just a beautiful setup. You know, I've seen a couple of breakdowns on it already of people, pointing out the tells on Haggerty and the reason why the elbow was the counter. It was just every now and then you see a fighter and they drill that right technique for the opponent that they're fighting. You know, now Inoue did it a couple of years ago in a boxing match. I always forget the guy's name, but it was that crisp, straight down the pipe as the guy was throwing a 1-2, and he just saw a chink in the guy's armor, a gap in his game where he could throw a particular technique at the right time. And as long as the timing was right, it was going to land and do a lot of damage. And even in that fight, you could see Haggerty bounding with that lead leg, and you saw a couple of times the elbow get shown there, and it wasn't quite in range. That's for me, that's fascinating because that's work that's been done in the gym. That's research that's been done in the gym, that's been put into training, into practice, and then worked in the fight. I mean, again, Haggerty is one of the best to ever do it. You know, he's got a long future ahead of him still, but the timing on that elbow was a thing of beauty.
Devastating, absolutely devastating. Final question before we sign off here. If you get your wish and the PFL set up a Masters division,
Is this me coming back?
what do you think?
Hey, why not? Why not?
Yeah?
Why not? I actually said to the PFL the other day, we were coming out of an event, and I said, look, I'll dust off and come back for another 12 months. And I gave them 3 or 4 names. I'd be like, look, this is a good little selection of names.
Are you being serious here?
Yeah,
Can
look,
we do it?
I'll always fight.
Come on.
I'll always fight. I love fighting. I love the adrenaline rush of it. I love the do or die feeling of a fight. You know, it's the single-mindedness. You're getting in there, you're throwing techniques, and you know, you're hoping that your game plan is going to be the one that is victorious. I'm a little bit older now, absolutely, but of course, if we've got a Masters division, and I've got a few good ideas in mind anyway, so we'll see.
Care to share any names?
Not right now, no, not right now. But I will say, I mean, Anthony Pettis has always been someone I've had a lot of respect for, and his name has been thrown around a few times regarding a future opponent for me. So maybe that's an option, but we'll see.
Wow. Next year?
Why not? If I leave it any longer, I'll be just too old, won't I? I'm 42 now, so I can't wait too much longer.